GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, and it's coming into force on 25th of May 2018, and it governs how organisations have to protect people's personal data, and it also seeks to give people more control over what organisations can do with their data. The first thing you should be concerned about or think of with GDPR is actually mapping the data you have in your organisation. So that could be in an email silo or in a third-party storage system like AWS. You need to know where all of your data is, and that also includes any Dropbox accounts or other types of personal storage that your employees are using for work reasons. So if you've got old historical data under GDPR, you probably should get rid of it. One of the benefits of GDPR is actually making you rethink what data you're storing, because if you're keeping people's data, it needs to be relevant to your business. You need the purposes which you collected it for still need to be relevant to your business goals. And if they're not, you need to delete that person's data. Any organisation keeping people's data, they need to have a lawful basis for processing it. So that might be consent, and if a person has given an organisation consent to process their data, it needs to be for an explicit purpose that's very clear and is very narrow, so it can't be used for anything outside of the reason the customer has given you their data. There are other reasons as well. Organisations could keep people's data to comply with a legal obligation or industry compliance regulations, or for the purposes of fulfilling a contract. GDPR stipulates something called subject access requests. A subject access request is where anyone can ask what data you store on them, and you need to be able to give them that data within a reasonable time frame. They can then ask for you to delete that data, and you have to be able to do that. An organisation also needs to make sure they can amend the data or allow a person to amend their own data and move that data. So if a person wants to stop using your product and move to your rival's product and wants you to send their information there, you need to be able to do that pretty quickly. Ongoing compliance is a key aspect of GDPR as well. It comes in on 25th of May, but that doesn't mean once you're compliant that day, you're fine. Regulators will look at whether you're compliant if you suffer a data breach, or if they decide to investigate your firm for any reason. You need to be able to show that even if you have suffered a data breach, you're doing your best to stay in compliance with GDPR. Compliance is a really difficult thing to maintain constantly, because if one of your employees is sat on a train and sends an email with customer data in the content of that email to an outside organisation, they've just breached GDPR regulations. So organisations really need to audit their compliance and ideally educate their users, certainly once a year, about how to protect data adequately under the legislation. The fines under GDPR are potentially huge. They're up to 4% of your annual turnover, or 20 million euros, whichever is higher. However, people cannot get a bit too obsessed with the fines. The biggest thing under GDPR to be aware of is if regulators see that you're making an effort to comply with it, and you're doing everything you can to maintain that compliance, they probably won't fine you unless the breach is incredibly huge or particularly egregious. What they will come down hard on is organisations who are ignorant of GDPR or don't care and haven't actually implemented its measures. Well, we have plenty of good resources on itpro.co.uk. There's lots of good information there for you to find out more about GDPR. You can also visit the Information Commissioner's Office online. I think that's ico.org.uk. and they have loads of resources for small, medium and large businesses to tell you more about GDPR.